Welcome back, guys, it's Mapper here today with another episode of Isekai Meikyuu de Harem. So, in this episode, we are going to be making some progress, I guess you could say, on the main storyline, or main quest line, question mark? I mean, it's hard to say that there is a main storyline or main quest line for this, but considering that, harem is in the title of this work, you can assume that getting a harem is part of the, main storyline or main quest, right? And of course, it all starts with Roxanne. If my if the pacing is correct and my assumption is correct, I do believe that we will be getting, Michio will be clearing the conditions, getting enough money in this episode. We'll have to see. Like I said, the pacing of this adaptation is a little bit weird. They're definitely rushing it a lot more than the novels and the manga, but I've already talked at length about this. I can kind of understand why they're trying to push this through. Not to mention they're also adding some parts that I feel like are unique to the anime, actually, and not really within the original novels or manga. So maybe it'll surprise me, maybe not. In any case, let's get into it, and I'll talk more later. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, we're getting deeper and deeper into the actual into the actual mechanics of this work. Like I said, this is part of why I love this particular work so much, because it actually utilizes the gamification part aspect of the a lot of works utilize gamification mechanics inside like the initial stages, like introducing the world or whatnot, but a lot of times it turns into sort of like an afterthought, and instead is just served as some sort of convenient method to allow us, the viewers, or readers, sort of like from a meta perspective, know about the status of the main characters and whatnot, rather than actually incorporating them into a mechanic that the characters themselves need to utilize in order to get through the various trials and tribulations and quests and whatnot. Now, I still don't understand like how exactly we are going to get all the way to to all 5 girls, but oh well. Don't tell me they're gonna do something like, 2 girls per episode or something like that. If they do, I will be sorely disappointed, because that means they'll be skipping over like 70% or 80% of stuff. 3 days to purchase. Like I said, out of all the abilities that he has, I definitely feel Identify is the most OP. So basically, his mana capacity has increased. Yep. I mean, I guess it has been one episode without fan service. I don't actually quite remember this part either as well. Hey! Okay, there's one important part that's going to come up here that I do hope the adaptation does not mess up. Like, there's no reason for them to mess up that part. Yeah, okay. So, like, this is. I think this is kind of like the first indication so far in the anime of how cautious that Michio actually is, right? I mean, we saw a little bit about with it in the last episode, but like I said, the adaptation so far, even though it seems that everything is flowing quickly at this point, in actuality, within the manga slash novel, Michio spent a lot more time before he got to this point. Like, we go through his thought process a lot of and how he keeps on thinking of various things that will go wrong here and there, including, even going into his first shop or going into his first labyrinth. And the same here as well, right? So we can see that he doesn't like just blindly rush in or whatnot. He takes a lot of time to cover his tracks. Michigan. uh, Cutting it close. No hesitation. But honestly, what happens next actually gets me fired up even more. Not this part. That's just to get the bounty. We're overwhelming. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess they still kind of like. Okay, so anyways, talking about that particular scene a little bit more. So again, I'm glad that they went through the entire thing, but really, this was what I was mostly interested in is how he came to this particular conclusion and you know how he decided to go through this entire thing and whatnot. Like honestly, even though you could consider this like um grim dark or very very dark or not really befitting of your normal shonen protagonist, right? But in all honesty, like this particular scene here really piqued my interest in this particular series because I think this is one of the first times I've seen a main character decide to go through this kind of stealth killing method, even if the premise of this story wasn't particularly anything in regards to the main character being on the side of evil or having like some sort of stealth related ability or whatnot. He came to this conclusion. Basically, he came to this conclusion here because he understood that there's no way he could face them heads on, right? And so that's why he decided to use this particular method of ambushing and assassination in order to complete his goal of getting the money, right? It wasn't right. So it was mostly based on the fact that he recognized his power level, he recognized his situation, and so he decided to do something like that. He did it! Like I said, pretty much expected that he would be doing it by the end of this episode. Roxanne! let's just say that Roxanne has a very unique personality, of all things. Is he going to give like the? Is he going to read the rights? Okay, so I guess they cut out all that part. uh, yeah, so it took us 3 episodes to get to Roxanne, and, well, anyways, I'll talk more at the end of this. See you after this. Alright guys, so, anyways, let's talk a little bit about this episode. Well, let's start with Roxanne first, right? So, the entire part in the ending there with... I think we should recognize 2 or 3 things, right? Just from observing Roxanne so far. So, not really spoilers, I think we can infer that if you know, we observe things a little bit, so just gonna point those things out. Number 1 is in Roxanne's personality, so we can see that she has a very serious personality here, and also takes the mindset of being a slave actually pretty seriously as well, as we can see with how she mentioned that, you know, even if she wasn't actually purchased by Michio yet, she's already apologizing for doubting him, right? So you know, just from that we can kind of get a little bit of a reference into Roxanne's personality, which will play a role in the future as well. So that's number 1. Number 2, and I guess actually kind of tied back to this first point, is we can see Roxanne's behavior, her body language, the way that she acts, the way that she portrays herself, the way that she carries herself, right? And we can clearly see that she is quite versed in, you know, how it is to act as a slave and how to act as a master. So again, this does have actually some impact going forwards into the future as well. So I'll just keep it at that, and leave it at that. The second thing to notice here, well, I guess not really notice, just a quick commentary, is how they once again sped up this scene. I mean, the thing here is that I recall, you know, something that actually made a little bit of a lasting impact to me was when I first read this scene in the novels. So actually, the slave trader gave like an entire spiel about the rights and responsibilities of a slave owner and so on and so forth. Like, you know, they have like this entire list of things that they need to go through, sort of like the procedure. Think of it as reading your rights or rules or terms, something like that, right? And it includes things such as, you know, you have to take good care of your slave, you know, you need to provide them with shelter, with food, etc., etc., etc. They make it into like a very formal process there, and you know, you could say that this is just fluff and it's not really important, but I do feel it is kind of important in terms of building up the world of this Isekai Meikyuu Harem, because, you know, slaves are going to be a big deal here, right? So even though currently it's not in the title anymore, it was actually in the original title of this work, you know, slaves and whatnot, because, you know, it is an integral part of this particular anime and this particular work. And the sort of like, I think I mentioned this back in episode 1 in the introduction part. So the way that they portray slaves here in this particular setting, is actually quite serious. All right, so they make an entire system and whatnot based around it, and so one of the parts where you can see that the author is clearly trying to make his own, put prominence onto the system and make people really take it seriously is also in how every time you purchase a slave, you need to go through like many checks and procedures, and also have to be read rights and so on and so forth. And it will come up a little bit later on as well in terms of etiquette and what slave owners versus what slaves should do, and etc. etc. So I guess that's the second part I want to mention here, that they once again kind of glossed over, which I guess they will maybe go back to it in the future once some relevant things come on, but yeah, in any case, we'll just keep it at that, right? So, we will, of course, be having much more time spent with Roxanne in the upcoming episodes here, so we can look forward to that. And that, of course, includes sexy times as well. So, putting her aside for now, let's talk a little bit more about this particular episode, and in particular, how Michio handled the bandit situation, right? So again, I mentioned last episode and in this episode as well, this particular arc, if you will, getting enough money and how he infiltrated the bandit base and eventually killed them and got the bounty was really a big reason of why I was drawn into this series as well. So when it started initially, I give all new novels or manga and whatnot like a few chapters, right? Going through I see if I like the MC's personality, if I like how he feels and whatnot, and I like to look through the world setting to see if it's really tight, or is it really all over the place, or is it if it's tacked on more as an afterthought and whatnot. So when I was reading this, I was initially impressed by a lot of things, right? I was impressed by the MC's cautious sort of his cautious sort of personality. He really thinks things through. He likes to experiment, but he's also not afraid to get his hands dirty, right? And as we can clearly see in this episode as well. And also, I love how the story was taking the gamification system very seriously, constantly telling us about how the main character is experimenting with using different classes, equipping different skills, etc., in order to make a well-balanced approach to how he wants to how he wants to go about things, right? Whether it's conquering the labyrinth or killing some bandits or some other kind of stuff. So I was already impressed by those parts. But this arc in particular, I think, is sort of like a culmination of all of that. Before he went into this, actually, I distinctly recall that he did a lot of pre-planning, including, what skills he wanted to equip. Like, he needs to prepare teleport. He needs to he first marks out some safe spots of, where he can use teleport and whatnot, and thinks of, all his escape routes and whatnot. We can see in this episode, within this episode itself, that, because his teleport requires line of sight, right? It requires him to actually be there before. So that's also something that he really went through and did, going around, checking surroundings, making sure that he always has a safe spot to go to, etc. He also... I also enjoyed the fact that first he did some scouting, right? He even though he knew like where the bandits were on like 3 days before, he waited until the last day, at the last moment in order to prepare everything, to make sure that all his plans are ready, his scouting is ready, etc., in order to make his strike. And he thought of a plan to go through it, like utilizing the thief bandana and utilizing that as sort of bait to get into the hideout and eventually, assassinate everyone, right? And that's also another part that I love as well, right? Well, after his takedown of the first bandit was really more so of a silent takedown as well, because he went into this with a mindset that he wants to ambush them while they're sleeping, and if possible, not fight them at all, and instead just kill them all in their sleep, right? As we saw that he was trying to do there in the actual episode as well. Unfortunately, one eventually did react to noises and get up, but that was more of a miscalculation, right, or misplay, if you will. But if he had his way, all four of them would have been slain, and Michio would have just disappeared without actually confronting any of the bandits at all. Get in, get out, get the hands, get the money, get Roxanne, very clearly focused on what he wants to do and why he's doing it, right? So I love that, and I love how he goes about this, without also, sort of like agonizing over every single little thing, and the morals and ethics of this. Like, I absolutely hate it when we're in a situation where clearly, these are bandits. These are people who have also killed and looted and plundered and raped and whatnot, and then main character still has a hard time thinking of whether or not he's going to kill them, or whether or not he wants to use an underhanded method like assassination to get through. So I love the MC's mindset here. And really, it's part of a big reason why I enjoy this series so much, just because he's able to utilize his strengths and get things done no matter what needs to be done, right? So, yeah, I'm really impressed by how he went through all of this and how he eventually got the money. Now, granted, is there a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina here? It just happened to meet the bandits, just happened to have bounties on them, just happened to have enough money to get Roxanne? Sure, there's a lot of coincidences here, but at the very least, right, it is kind of like plausible in a sense, because it was all set up, and we were also set up with the fact that bandits have bounties, and that's what steered Michio towards this particular endeavor in the first place, right? Because the initial bandits that he killed, he managed to get a bounty on, and so that's what happened here as well. I don't quite remember if his final kill on the bandit boss, right, the bandit leader, was due to overwhelming or not. I distinctly remember he utilized overwhelming, but I'm not 100% sure here. So I guess in the end it doesn't really matter all that much. In any case, yeah, anyways, I'm just impressed with how he went through all this, even though in this episode he kind of like nonchalantly just went through all of this. But trust me, like in the novels and whatnot, he definitely prepared a whole lot more for this. Beyond that, what else do I want to talk about here? I mean, we are going to be doing more of the Labyrinth stuff in the future, so I'm going to leave it at that. I don't really want to spoil anything further. Like I said, I will talk a little bit more in depth about things once we get to them, and if I feel that the anime is leaving out some specific information. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it here. Not really too much else. I'm just going to quickly think. The sort of like the drawbacks of draining your MP and whatnot, right? You get into a state of depression. It's kind of like whatever. I've seen other works utilize that sort of method before as well. I'm not entirely in love with that particular kind of a drawback or whatnot, but I mean, it is what this particular offer decided to implement, and it will come back in the future, right? Because this sort of like falling into a state of depression when your MP is drawn dry. Well, it will happen also in the future as well, towards both friends and foes. If you think about it seriously, it is sort of like a snowball effect, right? You get into this spiral of negativity, and being at 0 mana itself is already quite dangerous, right? That means you're not able to utilize your skills or magics and whatnot, and then also losing like your determination, losing your willpower and whatnot. It definitely has a lot of drawbacks, which I'm not quite sure that the offer really thought of in terms of utilizing this particular drawback in the grander sense of the world mechanics, but I guess that's kind of beside the point here. I'm just gonna say that I'm not particularly in love with this mechanic, but it is here to stay. So also keep that in mind as well. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Not really too much else to talk about. Like I said, we will learn more about Roxanne and her interactions with Michio and her sort of propensity as a warrior in the future. And I would reckon and say the second girl we will probably meet maybe in the 6th episode. 4 or 5. Yeah, I think maybe we will meet in the 6th episode if we are following this pacing and if the anime is indeed rushing things along. But I feel like there's probably going to be at least 2 episodes where they are still getting to know each other, gaining a certain level of trust with each other, and of course for the anime's namesake, you know, getting into the Meikyuu, getting into the Labyrinth, and doing some stuff there. But yeah, in any case, that's it for now. Thank you guys. Let me know if you have any other questions or thoughts, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.